There's a specific version of anxious attachment that doesn't look like the videos. It doesn't look like checking your phone every 30 seconds. It doesn't look like texting twice before they respond, or falling apart when someone goes quiet. It looks like being thoughtful. It looks like being attentive. It looks like caring deeply about the people in your life, and being quietly devastated when they don't seem to care the same way back. Most people who are anxiously attached don't see themselves in the obvious description. They see someone more extreme. Someone who texts 17 times. Someone visibly unraveling. And so they file themselves under, not me. Maybe a little anxious, but not that. This video is about the version that files itself under not me, because there's a good chance the pattern has been running, quietly, efficiently, invisibly. Inside behaviors you've always called something else. Caring, sensitive, conscientious, just how you are. This video names 10 of those behaviors, not to put a label on you that makes you feel worse, but because a pattern without a name runs the show, and a pattern with a name that you can start to work with. Before we get to the list, here's something worth saying. The people most likely to underestimate their anxious attachment are often not the people with the mildest version of it. They're often the people who have built the most sophisticated way of managing it, who learned early that visible anxiety costs something. Attention, approval, the relationship itself. And so the pattern went underground. It didn't disappear. It adapted. What came out the other side looked like consideration, looked like being low maintenance, looked like someone who doesn't cause problems, who checks in thoughtfully, who reads the room, who never makes it about them. The minimization isn't denial, exactly. It's a logical conclusion from incomplete evidence. You looked at the description of anxious attachment, the visible distress, the flooding, the obvious behavioral spiral, and your pattern didn't match. So you concluded, not me, but the visible spiral is only one version. For a significant number of people, the pattern expresses in the other direction, not outward and loud, but inward and precise, careful, contained, and almost impossible to see from the inside because every individual behavior has a perfectly reasonable explanation. That's what makes it so exhausting. Not the pattern itself, but the years of explaining each piece of it without ever seeing the whole. So, 10 signs, not as a verdict. As a mirror, sign 1, you rehearse conversations before you have them, not just important ones. Ordinary ones, a quick question at work, a text to someone you like, a casual thing you want to say at dinner. You run through how they might respond. You adjust what you were going to say based on responses that haven't happened yet. And by the time the actual conversation arrives, you've already had it 4 or 5 times in your head. This gets called being prepared, being thoughtful, thinking before you speak. What it actually is, your nervous system pre-scanning for threat before the interaction begins, running the simulations so there are no surprises. Because surprises, somewhere along the way, became something to manage. Sign 2. You track someone's mood before you track anything they're actually saying. You walk into a room and know, within seconds, what the emotional temperature is. You clock the slight tension in a jaw, the pause before a word, the quality of the silence after you say something. You're reading the subtext while everyone else is still processing the text. This looks like emotional intelligence. And it is. It's a real and sophisticated skill. But in the anxious attachment pattern, it's not chosen. It's automatic. It was built before you had a word for it. In an environment where reading the room wasn't a social advantage. It was how you knew what was coming. The scanner was useful once. The scanner is still running now, in rooms where it doesn't need to. Sign 3. You go quiet when you actually need to say the real thing. Not avoidant quiet. Not, I don't want to talk about this quiet. A different kind. The quiet of someone who has calculated, very quickly, that saying the real thing might cost more than staying silent. So the real thing gets translated into something softer. A hint. A question shaped like a statement. Something that leaves a door open to retreat through. You'd call this being sensitive to timing. Choosing your battles. Not wanting to make a scene, the pattern underneath it is the learned belief that the direct expression of a need risks the relationship, and that the relationship, at some level, must be protected from the full weight of what you actually feel. Sign 4. You pre-apologize before you ask for something. Before you share an opinion someone might disagree with. Before you take up space that you're not certain you're allowed to take. Sorry to bother you. This might be a stupid question. I don't want to make a big deal of this, but it feels like courtesy, consideration for others, not wanting to be demanding. What it is, an attempt to preemptively reduce the risk of rejection by making yourself smaller before anyone else can make you smaller. The apology arrives before the request because somewhere the lesson was your needs require justification before they're allowed to exist. Sign 5. You feel a specific kind of low-grade deflation when a plan changes, even when you know logically that it's fine. Not anger, not even disappointment exactly. More like a quiet contraction, a small going inward. Because somewhere under the plan was a piece of evidence. Evidence that someone wanted to be with you, that it was going to be okay, that things were solid. And when the plan shifts, the evidence shifts with it. You don't say this out loud. You say it's fine, and it mostly is. But something in the body registered it as more than a logistical adjustment. That something is the nervous system, running its constant quiet calculation. Am I safe here? Is this still okay? Now, the next 5 signs are a little harder to admit. They touch something deeper, not just how you act, but what you've quietly believed about love and safety for longer than you might want to acknowledge. Sign 6. You check in and then listen for something underneath the answer. How are you? How was your day? Are we good? These are caring questions. They are also sometimes reconnaissance. You're not just asking how they are, you're listening for tone, warmth, the particular quality of their attention that tells you whether the temperature has changed since you last checked. This is one of the harder ones to sit with, because it takes something that feels like love, the checking in, the caring, and shows you there's something else underneath it. Not instead of love. Alongside it. The need for information, for evidence, for reassurance that what felt okay this morning still feels okay now. Sign 7. In genuinely good moments, when things are actually going well, there's a quiet bracing. Not always. Not loudly. But sometimes when it's good, when the relationship feels stable and warm and easy, something small inside you is already waiting for it to change. A kind of held breath. A superstition. Don't get too comfortable. Don't trust this completely. Something usually shifts. This gets called being realistic. Protecting yourself. Having learned from experience what it actually is. A nervous system that was trained in inconsistency and doesn't yet have a template for safety that lasts. So when safety arrives, it scans for the exit, not because it wants to leave, but because it doesn't fully believe it can stay. Sign 8. You find consistently available people a little hard to trust. This is the one people rarely say out loud. The partner who texts back quickly, who shows up when they say they will, who is warm and present without agenda, and something in you finds it slightly disorienting. Slightly too easy. Slightly suspicious. Not consciously. You don't think, this person is suspicious. You think, this feels different. Or, I don't know why I'm not more excited. Or nothing at all. Just a low-level flatness, where the spark was supposed to be, because your nervous system learned attachment in a context of inconsistency. Close and safe got wired as 2 separate things, and someone who offers both, reliably, doesn't match the template. And the template is what the body has learned to call real. Sign 9. You interpret neutrality as withdrawal. Silence that's just silence reads as distance. A shorter text than usual reads as coolness. A slightly distracted conversation reads as something shifting between you. You genuinely know that it's probably nothing. And you are still somewhere in the body running the calculation. That's not crazy. That's your wiring doing exactly what it was trained to do. Sign 10. After a conflict resolves, you feel relief. And then, sometimes, you find yourself almost recreating the tension. Not deliberately, not consciously, but there's something about the reconnection after rupture. The warmth of repair, the closeness of we made it through that feels more real, more vivid, more like love than the ordinary stable quiet of things being fine. This is the one that shows you where the pattern started. Because somewhere, the lesson was, closeness comes after difficulty. Love is proved in repair. You feel most connected in the aftermath of almost losing it. And so, without meaning to, sometimes the body reaches for rupture. Because rupture, at least, leads somewhere it knows. That's why these 10 signs are hard to see. Each one has a name that sounds like something else. Each one was built to be functional, not visible. The pattern didn't hide to deceive you. It hid because the environment that created it required it to. You've been carrying this without a name. That changes right now. For anyone who just recognized themselves in more than a few of these, there's a structured journal in the description built specifically for this next step, not a diary. A 30-day guided practice for catching the pattern in real time, before it runs, not just after. The video named it. That resource helps you start to see it the moment it activates. Link in the description. So now that you've recognized it, what do you actually do with that recognition? Here's what recognition actually gives you, and what it doesn't. It doesn't give you a fixed self. Seeing the pattern in yourself doesn't mean the pattern is you. It means the pattern has been running in you, which is a very different thing. The shame that can come with recognizing it, oh, so this is what I've been doing, is worth sitting with for just a moment. Not to punish yourself with it, but because that shame has a useful piece of information inside it. It means you already know, at some level, that this isn't the whole of who you are. Shame about a pattern is not the same as being the pattern. It's the part of you that can see it from a slight distance. And that distance, even a small one, is where everything starts. The work that comes after recognition is not about eliminating these behaviors, not about catching yourself and shutting it down, not about becoming a person who never rehearses a conversation or braces in a good moment. It's about something much smaller and more specific than that. It's about the moment, the one moment inside the behavior, where you can say, that's the activation, that's the pattern running. I'm watching it run, not stopping it, not fixing it, watching it, because the distance between being the spiral and watching the spiral, even for 2 seconds, even badly, is where change actually lives. And you cannot create that distance with a behavior you haven't named yet. You named it today, 10 times, in 10 specific behaviors. Some of them surprised you, some of them you've been calling something else for years. And maybe one of them, the one that landed hardest, you already knew. You just hadn't let yourself know you knew. This is the version that doesn't show up in the obvious description. This is the version that reads as consideration and care and being a thoughtful person. This is the version that filed itself under not me and kept running quietly underneath every relationship you've had. It was always this version, and now you have a name for it. If this opens something and you want a structured way to go deeper, the pattern journal in the description is built for exactly this moment. 30 days of prompts designed to catch the pattern before it runs. Link in the description and the pinned comment. Which of these surprised you most? The one you've been calling something else for years. Here's what to hold from this. Not as a verdict. Not as a new story to tell about everything that's gone wrong, but as a fact, a specific, usable, compassionate fact about how your nervous system learned to move through relationships. These 10 behaviors were not mistakes. They were intelligent. Your nervous system built them in an environment where they were the right response, where tracking mood was protective, where pre-apologizing kept the peace, where staying quiet preserved something that felt too fragile to risk. The pattern was hiding in what you called your best qualities, and that's not an accident. That's how well-designed the protection was. The problem is never that you built these responses. The problem is that they survived the environment that made them necessary. And your nervous system, which is not irrational, not broken, not permanently damaged, doesn't automatically know the difference between then and now. It's still running the old assessment, still scanning, still pre-apologizing, still bracing in the good moments, because it hasn't yet had enough evidence that the good moments are allowed to stay. That's the work. Not information, evidence. Repeated, embodied, lived evidence that's safe as a place you're allowed to remain. And here's the thing about the version that doesn't look like the version. The people who don't recognize themselves in the obvious description are often the people who are closest to the shift. Not because their pattern is milder, but because they've been working so hard for so long to manage something they couldn't name that the moment of naming it carries an unusual kind of weight. Something gets to put something down. The version of you that can move through a relationship without the scanner always running, without the pre-apology, without the bracing, without the constant quiet calculation, is not a stranger. It's not a future self you have to earn the right to become. It's the direction your nervous system is already learning to move in, one recognition at a time. You found this video. You stayed through it. You recognized yourself. Not the version you feared you were, but the real one, the specific one. The one that's been doing its best in a pattern it inherited and didn't choose. That is not the behavior of someone who has given up on becoming different. That is the behavior of someone who is, right now, in this moment, already doing the work.